in the role of the ever-evolving role of the CISO. So, you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Looks like it's working as well. So I'm Evgeniy. I've been around for 20 years in cybersecurity. If you're here in Toronto, we may work together in one point. I spent majority of my career in a company called Horjovic Group. So if you ever watch Shark Tank in US, you may know who Robert Horjovic. I graduated last year and I have my own consulting agency right now. I support VARs, MSSPs, and vendors. I've been working in network security for majority of my life and been talking on the SASE and SASE space for probably last 5-6 years. And my podcast with Dimitri actually did long interviews about remote access and unbound browsing. I think this is how we met in the beginning.
Absolutely.
So happy to talk about the space. It's a very important and emerging space. And surprisingly, the space changes every year as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, when I made the transition from enterprise practitioner to the vendor side, which was with a startup called Axis Security, the first place I went to was a podcast, and that's how I met this gentleman here. So enjoyed, what was it, season
2,
season 2, where basically you interviewed all the vendors in the space. I don't think you got them all, because I think there's like, I don't know how many there are now, 30 or so. I've lost count.
Many of them been acquired or merged with somebody else, so it's also changed, and also the entire name changed as well. We had started with SASE and SASE in the beginning, and now we have single SASE. By the way, before we go, does people even know what SASE mean? Anybody?
Can you raise your hand if you know, if you can give me a definition of what SASE is? Raise your hand. Anyone want to tell us what that is?
Actually, I have a different question maybe. Is any of you here have parts of the SASE or SASE deployed in your environment? Can you raise your hand? Okay, some of you have deployed, some not, so we'll have to touch on all of them and see where you can start, or we may continue.
All right, so let's dive into it. So we're going to level set. Why SASE? How did it come about? What are the components? And then we'll move into a fireside chat where we'll talk maybe 4 or 5 different topics regarding the framework known as SASE. Change is ever evolving in our industry. If you think back, back in the 90s, it was all about applications and data centers, and our security stacks, they basically were built around those data centers. But then obviously change happened. We got cloud, the events of 2020, and as a result, in the company I work for, HPE, we kind of believe this is really what's happening in the space. We're seeing the evolution of applications. They're moving out of the data center and into the cloud. It could be a SaaS application like Workday or Salesforce. Maybe it's some ML application that might exist in Google. Or maybe you're trying to exit that private data center, moving it into an IaaS platform. Maybe it's Azure. But these things are happening, and they're happening rather rapidly. The other challenge we're seeing is AI. It's the topic du jour of IT, and it's the topic du jour of business. How do we secure AI? What's AI going to mean to us in the future? So really, the things we need to be thinking about in network and security. And I was talking to somebody right before the talk, and security generally relies, or it involves one silo of the business or one silo of the technology space. Networking involves another area of the business or IT, generally within the infrastructure team. And a lot of times, these two teams have tension between themselves. One of them is very favorable to security. Security is really important for the business. It reduces your risk. But it can be also seen as a blocker, something that slows the business down. Networking, on the other hand, is really about speed, delivering packets in an optimized fashion. And when you talk to a network engineer, they really want to make sure those packets get to the destination with the least amount of latency as possible. The challenge, though, is in the middle, and that is where if you're a CISO, that is where your customers exist, the employees that you are serving to protect. We need to make sure that their experience is performant, that they're able to access these applications with minimum hassle, but yet also we're de-risking the business, making the business more secure. So that's the area that when we talk about network and security, that middle area called experience, that's where we need to meet, and that's where we need to have some agreement on. So what is going on with modern day networks, and why are they so complicated? A lot of it goes back to how these networks were built. The foundations of our networks today, they were really built in the 90s. Routers, switches, remote access systems. A lot of the protocols that we use today, even in our business, that we rely upon, how the internet is built, BGP, harkens back to the last century. And as a result, we've taken these technologies and we kind of kept building on top of them, a foundation of legacy technology. And as a result, the networks that we have today are built to be very complex. And the security mechanisms that we apply upon them are also complex. The other challenge we have is how these networks have evolved and how the solutions are built. It's not like you have one solution or two solutions. In networking, you might have one vendor for your wireless, one vendor for your switch infrastructure, another vendor for your data center, and maybe another vendor for your wide area network. Security, on the other hand, has multiple vendors, multiple products. I read a study, I think it was about a month ago, that said the average large enterprise has over 76 discrete different security technologies. The challenge is, how do we bring them together? How do we create visibility when you have all these different parts and pieces? Because visibility is what you need to be successful. So that really kind of brings us to the topic of the day, SASE, and what SASE is, and what's it about, and what sort of problems it's looking to solve. So you want to take this slide here and kind of break down the stack of SASE, and then we'll have a conversation.
Yes, definitely. So we'll go a bit back in 2019 when Gartner decided to create a framework. This is the time where there was still a framework, and it called it Secure Access Service Age. And basically it created and contained 4 different pillars. One is SD-WAN, the network part, it's important. CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker. ZTNA, and Security Web Gateway. During this time was very interesting because Security Web Gateway and CASB had their own magic quadrant from Gartner, and ZTNA didn't. And it was really as a framework. And during this time, we had many companies that did the Web Gateway part, the remote access part, the CASB part, and definitely SD-WAN. But very, very quickly, we had many acquisitions and changes in the industry. And all the ZTNA companies realize that if they want to be in the Gartner, they have to have Security Web Gateway. So Axis, one of them, Perimeter 81, and many, many others, went down to development, the part to be part of Gartner. So Gartner kind of realized that there is the network part, but there is also the security part, and they created an SSE Magic Quadrant, I believe 2021, the first one was. So the SSE Magic Quadrant basically removed everything else, so the Security Web Gateway and the CASB, and basically created one magical vendor that's supposed to do your outbound browsing, your remote access, and everything related to securing your SaaS applications like Dropbox, OneDrive, Salesforce, and many others. And it kept the SD-WAN part aside. So this is why you see here some of the network features and some of the security features on the other end. And I'm not really sure, but Gartner didn't stop there. So they confused everyone even more 2 years after when they released a single vendor SASE. And single vendor SASE pretty much goes back to 2019. Now it's no longer a framework, now it's a vendor. I'm not sure if Gartner was trying to paint the field or they basically follow what's happening, because by this time, majority of the SASE vendors became also a vendor with SD-WAN. So HPE had Aruba for a long time in SD-WAN technology, and then acquired Axis. Zscaler claims they're never going to go to SD-WAN, and they did acquire an SD-WAN vendor. Palo Alto definitely did the same with CloudGenix. So basically, and even Netscope as well. I forgot the Netscope companies they acquired.
Is it Infolit? Influx.
So in reality, all the vendors that participated in the SASE Magic Quadrant to become a security vendor now became a single vendor SASE as well. And I think it's always a good way to understand where the industry is going when Microsoft decided to compete as well. So Microsoft announced earlier last year it's going to have their own set of products. Still early stages, we still not know where it's going to going, but at least we understand the importance of this field as well. And we'll talk about the amount of money spent in the industry.
Sure.
But as you can see, everything you firewall did, everything you secure web gateway did, everything that your network DLPs did, your CASB version 1, version 2 did, is now part of SASE and SSE. So by magically putting SASE in your environment, you can probably remove 8 vendors if you do it correctly. Not everybody do this correctly. There is no silver bullet. There's a lot of planning, but there's actually a very good ROI if you're doing it correctly.
So let's back up a little bit. If I'm, and I'm sure you have this conversation on a regular basis. If I'm a CISO, or maybe a director of infrastructure, VP of infrastructure, and I'm having a conversation with the CIO, what would make me want to think about going to this model? What is the business problems you're looking to solve?
It's because HP has great products.
I'm sorry?
Because HP has great products? Okay, it's joking
Yeah,
aside.
yeah.
When I'm a CISO and I'm going to CIO to talk about them, if I'm going to start the conversation from explaining the bits and bytes and the features in the product, it's not going to go anywhere. I need to understand where the business is going. I need to understand where the CIO want to take the business and how my security controls, my security products will help them to accomplish. If I start to explaining how great is my SD-WAN, but the CIO wants to remove all the offices and everybody going to work from home, it's going to be a mistake. So I first need to understand what's the business plan for the next 5 years, and then understand how whatever I'm approaching is going to support this. So it could be putting an SD-WAN equipment because I want to expand the offices, or it could be going to the mobile agent and securing the SaaS applications because the company want to get out of the data centers.
So it's really about securing applications at the end of the day. And honestly, it's about delivering applications because you have one mechanism, the network mechanism that includes SD-WAN, WAN optimization, acceleration, network acceleration as well, which is about the delivery side of things. And then the other stack, the SSE stack, is really about securing them with ZTNA, securing your remote workforce, securing application delivery, CASB, obviously, securing your SaaS applications, getting visibility into what applications are on your network, so shadow IT, helping you solve the shadow IT problem, and then obviously secure web gateway, which secures your remote folks from the internet. It provides that internet browsing.
And I think it's
protection.
important to add here, some people in the industry trying to apply SASE to secure your data center when you're talking to end user. And I think it's wrong. With the SASE and SSE, you're securing your corporate environment. So you're securing your access to your corporate applications. You're securing access of the users. You're making sure users don't downloading anything malicious that's going to impact your infrastructure. So we're not trying to have a data center security. It's not about WAF. It's not about databases. It's for your corporate environment. And we'll talk later on about the idea of zero trust and how it's applied as well. But it's very important to understand we're talking about your corporate infrastructure, not your data center toward the end user.
Yeah, so in my mind, this is really the mechanism for delivering secured applications, whether those applications exist in the cloud, IaaS, SaaS, PaaS, whatever you may want to use, or in your private data center or in a colo. So those legacy applications that we leveraged in the past before 2010. So let's have a little conversation here.
Should I be scared?
Yeah, maybe you should be. So we really kind of talked about this SASE. It's been out since 2019. So it's been on the market now for what, 4.5 years, 3.5 years or so. So according to Deloro, it's now a thing. So Deloro, Mauricio Sanchez, who's one of their analysts, he is predicting that SASE now will have a $10 billion run rate, so pretty significant this year. But zero trust, We talk a lot about zero trust. It's a word you're going to hear, a term you're going to hear here. Outside of AI, it's a thing. So it's probably the term you're going to hear the most. So if we're talking to, you have a choice. So you're the CIO, and you're the CISO. You're talking to the CIO, and you're given a choice. The red pill is you get to deploy SASE this year. The blue pill is you get to deploy zero trust. Which one do you choose and why?
Assuming SASE right now it's a vendor, and zero trust is not a vendor, it's a framework and an approach, I'll choose zero trust because it's actually going to take SASE under the zero trust approach. Not for everything, it's not going to segment my data center, but it will take a portion of my zero trust approach, and I hope it's going to be zero trust journey and not just a small project. That's why I will choose zero trust and actually segment and put the SASE in one of the segments of my project.
So you're going to take both pills?
Yes.
You're supposed to only select one.
I selected one. It's just
But I agree with that. I mean, I view SASE, the framework it is, especially the ZTNA part, as an accelerant for your zero trust journey. If you think about it, the original sin that we all deal with in this room is that when we deployed networking back in the past, to call it the 80s, the 90s, we did it without security. Why? Probably because the data center was easy to protect as well. We didn't have the CPU cycles within our networking equipment to really add in the security treatments that we needed to do it. This is kind of our opportunity to go back and really start to solve that challenge that we put forth to ourselves. And I see, again, and I would agree with you, I will take both pills. SASE is really a way to kind of jumpstart your journey to zero trust. So how can you do that? One of the challenges I think CISOs deal with is third party. Third parties are a concern. If you deploy a contractor, think about what you have to do to get that contractor connected to your network. It may involve a laptop that you have to send out to them. Maybe you have to ask them to add an agent. Maybe there's a VPN gateway. All of those items either slow the business down or have risk. So if you think about some of the services out there with SASE, one of them is an agentless approach. So if you have applications that are web-based or SSA-based or maybe VNC, that's an opportunity that you can protect them with a ZTNA service from a SASE vendor. Another one is the browser.
Ooh.
The browser, let's talk a little bit about that one too, because that's another part of the SASE stack.
It's another part of the SASE stack. It's relatively new. We mentioned in the beginning that we see many changes every year, and the enterprise browser, it's a new addition to this, I guess, SASE party, if we want to call this like this. And it comes from a many different perspectives because, first of all, I'm taking the security all the way to the end user, so it could be very good from the perspective. Even so, you may say, do I have enough CPU and horsepower to do the work? But from third-party perspective, I clearly see an advantage. If, let's say, John want to join my company tomorrow as a part-time person, and I need to send John a laptop with all the tools, and I think last time I checked, it's probably at least $100 a month, at least probably $200 for the amount of tools and the laptop as well. So we're probably talking for about $4,000 just to send John a laptop with all the tools for him to work. Instead of that, I may require John to download a browser that may cost me $100 a year. And this browser will give John the connectivity, will give John all the tools he needs, and also prevent John from downloading all the information from my company to his laptop. Now, it's not a silver bullet, but it could be a very interesting approach to deal with third-party vendors.
So one of the things you probably want to look at as you're going down your SASE journey is how do you secure third-party access? Critical piece, very good way to jumpstart your zero trust journey. Another one is ZTNA. So let's talk a little bit about ZTNA. Primarily, when you talk about ZTNA in the context of SASE, it's really a replacement for remote access. So those VPN gateways of the past that you either ran off a firewall or you had a dedicated device, and then you had a chain of pizza boxes behind it, maybe an IDS system, SSL decryption. Some of these you can get within a firewall. Some of them are independent boxes that were very complicated. The challenge, obviously, with these VPN gateways is that you face a choice. Do I route all the traffic back to my data center, incur a latency penalty, or do I split tunnel it and take the risk that I'll encrypt the connection back to my data center, but things going out to the cloud, I'll just kind of let go. That's another area where you can get a jump start within your zero trust journey is moving to that ZTNA model. Why? Because when you move to a ZTNA model, you're only allowing access to the applications that particular employee, third party, contractor should only have access to. They don't see the rest of the network. The rest of the network is essentially cloaked. So let's talk a little bit about ZTNA in the
I think ZTNA, it's almost like a holistic and makes sense approach as a next step after next generation firewalls. Why? Because 15 years ago, 12 years ago, we realized we have to move from layer 4 rule base internally to layer 7. So we started to create rules on the firewalls based on applications and not just networks. But we also started to create rules not just by the source, but also by department or the person. So if John wants to connect from floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, every time he will switch floors, he will have the same rules. So if we're taking this approach that we know who is John, and we don't care if John in the office, Starbucks, traveling, or home, we can only give John access to particular applications, but now we're talking about remote access. So we're applying the same mechanisms. We know who is John, so we apply IAM in a way, and this could be that we're doing single sign-on. We understand that John coming from a designated laptop, that's part of our company. It may has all the patches and antivirus or whatever it is. So I already have some checks and balances to understand who you are. And only then I give you access to a particular application that I know. So I already have so many advantages, one. Two, it's actually require a company to understand where we have access, to which applications. It requires them to understand this entire idea of shadow IT. And with this drastic move to SaaS applications, I can control access to SaaS applications and to on-prem applications as well. And I know you're probably going to get there to talk about, can I use ZTNA inside the office and have access to my applications inside the office using ZTNA approach? It means it's not any from my LAN to my data center. I actually allow you access to particular applications in my data center. And Gartner called this how? Universal ZTNA?
Universal ZTNA. So it was kind of, if Gartner puts out every year, they put out a strategic roadmap. And if you have access to Gartner and you're looking at SASE, please download that document. If you don't, reach out to a vendor, reach out to a resource. It is kind of the roadmap for you to be successful in your SASE journey. Anyway, they revise it every year. And this year, it was curious. Within the third paragraph, they called out universal ZTNA. So, and question, because I think Gartner got a lot of inquiries on this topic, is ZTNA only a remote access technology, or is it an all-encompassing way that I design my network? And they stated essentially that they saw that universal ZTNA, meaning a single policy, basically designed within your cloud architecture, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the architectures of different SASE vendors. But that single policy that's created within that cloud vendor SASE model is then spread all the way down to the networking. So essentially what you get is the same policies that apply for remote access or that hybrid worker that we call today also are existing on the network. Why is this needed? Because the workforce today is not going to go back to the office. There are folks out there, leaders trying to mandate this. They're not having a lot of success, honestly, because the knowledge worker has realized the value of being able to work remotely on their times, on their terms. And that's where talent is going to go. As a result, you need a methodology, a mechanism essentially to secure them. The challenge with what's going on today is we've done a pretty good job of securing our remote workforce with models like SASE, with ZTNA, what we really see as this next generation of remote access. The difficulty is what happens when they're on campus, on the branch. The technologies of the past were really based on NAC, so network access control. If you've ever configured it, it can be a challenge. Turning all the knobs, all the bells and whistles on it can be a very difficult thing. Plus, the way it approaches security is different than, say, the ZTNA approach. ZTNA approach, very much identity-based. Network access control, very much network focused. So how do you merge the two? That's really where the industry is starting to head. In the company I work for, HPE Aruba Networking, we are kind of at the forefront of that. We see the value in bringing together both that policy that exists in the cloud all the way down to the campus, the branch, securing the same policies you have in the cloud all the way down to the switch port or the AP port. So that's a key aspect as you're looking out and evaluating vendors out there. Can you simplify both your cloud access and your on-prem network access?
So with HP right now, do I need an SD-WAN device in a branch?
We do.
Can you just use this AP to do all the
We can do
tunnels?
both. So we're bringing together the SD-WAN, which is based on Edge Connect. Also, we have another product called SD Branch. And we're also integrating what was formerly Access, now our SSE product, with APs. So if you have a micro branch and you want to have 3 APs within that branch, and you want the policy that exists in the cloud, we're able to do that here real soon.
I think one of the challenges we see on the market is we claim SASE is one, but when I need to configure, I need to go to multiple dashboards. How will this work with HP?
With HP, it's going to be one policy. It's going to be based out of our SSE product, and that policy is going to be pushed down to our controller, which is called NetConductor. NetConductor will then branch out and provide the policy onto those APs. Or there's another mechanism where that policy will just exist within SSE and then be pushed down to the APs directly, or the switches.
So in this case, and I'm wondering what you guys think in the crowd here as well, is this a security problem or a network problem? Who will configure what?
Oh, it's a good question. I think it's going to be a role-based situation where your network folks are going to be able to do their networky things, and then your security people are going to have to do the policy. So security sets the policy, and then the network confirms that it's active. I think a key piece, though, is how do we bring networking and security folks together? How do we unsilo them?
Networking event. They come here to the conference.
Yeah.
So this is an important part. But also I think we spoke before today is about monitoring, because networking usually were responsible on network and monitoring the performance when we basically in a data center in the office. With SASE and SSE, how do I monitor? How do I know that you have a good connection? How do I know where's the problem with the laptop, with the POP, or with the application?
That's another part of the framework of SASE and SSE is this whole area called digital experience monitoring. When I was in my former role at Columbia, that became quickly evident when we started moving applications to the cloud. The first one we really did, and very much like a lot of people in this room, was email. We basically moved from an on-prem exchange model to O365. And as a result, our network team started getting all sorts of calls about performance issues. And it got to the point where we had to prove our innocence as the network team, and started looking at different types of tools. At the time, Thousand Eyes was kind of at the forefront of that, and we ended up buying Thousand Eyes and putting agents out there. And anytime we had a performance issue, we could point the exchange team or the cloud team essentially at that tooling. They could see it, say, oh yeah, okay, that's either the network is really the problem, but more often than not, it's the application or the middle mile. So very helpful. But one of the things that SASE does is, because it is, for the most part, software-based, is you are able to grab a lot of that telemetry and put that into a data lake, then start to mine it. So the new tooling is called digital experience monitoring. And any vendor out there that you talk to, that's an area you're going to want to explore. Is there a mechanism whereby you can understand when you have an application problem? Is it the network? Is it the application? Is it the middle mile? Is it the router? Is it the person's home Wi-Fi? So that's a whole area to explore.
So let me ask you a question in this case. So it's a combination of access on the agent on your laptop, the POP, and all the different parts. If the SASE and SSE vendors know so much about me, can I do security analytics with the SASE or SSE vendor? Or do I need an external tool to help me there?
I think that's really up to you. It depends on what you've deployed today, whether it's a SIM, XDR, whatever tooling it is. The neat thing is you can spin that telemetry out, and there's a lot of telemetry that is basically put into those data lakes. Or some of the vendors are as well opening up their tooling essentially to allow you to do that searching within that data lake. That's an area that we are at the forefront of. And then I think tomorrow what we're going to see is the application of AI on top of that. The ability for you basically to have, I hate the term co-pilot, but I think Microsoft has coined that term, but that ability for you to do a natural language search on what is going on today, where are my top problems, what are the types of things that I need to be aware of within my network to help you be proactive. So you don't have to essentially dedicate that high-end engineer to constantly trying to mine that data, understand how performance is going, but essentially create that abstraction layer so you can put an operations person in charge of that.
So basically you're saying the SASE and SSE vendors going to buy XDR vendors very soon.
If they haven't already, they will. Or they'll build our own.
I know we have 5 minutes left. Do you want to open up for questions maybe?
Yeah, let's open it up for questions. Yes?
You mentioned term outside of the AI. Did I misheard you?
Outside of?
In the beginning of the session.
Yeah, so I think in the beginning of the session what I was talking about was there's really two buzzwords you're going to hear, zero trust and AI. But what we're going to see is the two merging together.
So last year when we started the conversation, thank you. Last year when we started the conversation, I decided to take that red pill. So we started on the SASE journey. So one thing that I find that, now that we're in the midst of, rolling out all the policies, there are different level of policy and governance that you can have with the SASE. One is like extreme visibility and extreme control. One is like medium, and one is less, visibility. So we find that with our population and the development tools and all the things that we use internally, sometimes it's really hard to apply that high security profile to many of these tools. You have to go through a lot of work to identify them. Do they accept the encryption? Do they need to bypass the encryption? So while we are working on the journey and we don't have our ZTNA, we still have the remote access through the VPN, do you suggest that we should take a less of a security governance and gradually beef it up to a more secure platform while we're going through the journey, or do you suggest that we do top security right up front?
I think it depends on the use case. For third parties, I think those, in my opinion, are the most riskiest, and I think that's where you really want to start with that more stringent secure policy. If you have, and I think it also depends on the where your company is and how long it's been around. And what I mean by that is, if your company is one that was formed in the 70s, or the company I used to work for was 1930s timeframe, they tend to build a lot of these legacy applications that are more difficult to deploy in a ZTNA manner. And as a result, probably going the less stringent route in that scenario is probably the right one. The one caution I do have is it's very much like firewall rules. If you don't start with strict rules to start with, going back and retrofitting is the challenge. Are you going to dedicate time and engineering talent to go back and basically, start to add those policies in? So It's got to be a project. It's got to be staffed. It's got to be resourced and called out.
I want to add, and I know we only have 1 minute left. Chris mentioned the morning in the keynoting about education and training and awareness. So my suggestion will be start with internally what you can, but educate the users. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them why you're doing. Explaining them the logic. Because people don't like change. It's a different psychological problem. But if you explain them in advance, guys, we're doing that and that, I see many people just dropping the rules. And then, as you mentioned, now you have tons of calls to IT because people are not happy. So you explain in advance, we're doing this project, we are on this journey, this is where we're going to get to eventually. So bear with us, explain to us. If you don't understand, we can do lunch and learns, we can record in the videos why and what we're doing to basically prepare people for the migration to this.
And it is a journey. I put up this slide here. The process to go to SASE isn't something you can do in a day, a week, a month. It's a process that probably will take your company 3 to 5 years to complete. Why? Because you're taking a lot of point products in the past, CASB, DLP, SWIG, remote access, and essentially converting them over to a single platform, a single vendor per se. And as a result, you may have different financial schedules. There may be some depreciation you have to do, some vendor contracts you may have to go through. So it's really a journey. The key part is to find a place, a business problem you want to solve, and then continue down the journey to get to SASE.
I know we're out of time. We're happy to take questions after. And I think, where is HP booth in the end?
HPE's booth is just down the hall here. We've got some demos that we're showing off. So stop by and chat us up.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.